Hello, 605 Speaks friends. It is a beautiful fall day in South Dakota. I'm super excited. I got my Bob is Love t-shirt out because tomorrow Janitor Bob gets inducted into the South Dakota Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I'm super excited about that. Janitor Bob and discussions of the Pomp Room movie, which you should look up, and SuperCon and people I know that spent far too many hours of their youth in garage bands or bars is how I met through Twitter the next person I'm going to talk to. And this is our first time really meeting. So on a Twitter meet so far is all it's been. And you're going to be surprised. This is not going to be about rock and roll, but it might be about rocks that roll. So I'm going to bring on my guest. She is from Sioux Falls. Hello, Jesslyn Brown.
Hi.
Hi. So we were just talking off camera a minute ago, but I'm going to tell this story. The reason I clicked on you on Twitter originally to find out more about you is John Holt tweeted about the Pomp Room, and then you responded to it. And so I clicked on your tweet, and I saw in your bio what I thought was the word phrenology, which is like a pseudoscience study of the bumps on your head.
Yep,
but the hashtag was really phenology.
Yes, phenology with no R.
With no R. And so then I started looking at all your other stuff, and I'm getting ready to MC SuperCon. And so I've been learning about all the women in STEM around Sioux Falls that are going to be at SuperCon this next weekend. And that's what you're not presenting at SuperCon or anything, but you're a woman in STEM from Sioux Falls.
I am.
So tell me, what is phenology?
Okay, so I mean, you led in with a whole lot of different things that I can riff off of. But phenology is the study of the timing of biological events. So if you think about what is a biological event, that can be something like leaves coming out on a tree or flowers budding. It can be things like animals moving around, migration of animals, or hibernation of bears, things that have timing, things that recur in nature and have kind of a predictable time.
And so is it when you say biology, things that occur biologically, is it like how like every day at 3:15 I need a bottle of pop? Is it like also the human body biology, or is this study of things in the greater natural world?
That is a great question, and honestly, I think so. I mean, if it's something that's really predictable and has been around through evolution, I don't know if your consumption of coffee qualifies for that.
If it's evolution,
but these other things that are like, they happen every year without fail. Well, I shouldn't say without fail, because sometimes things don't happen predictably.
Right. But then that's what the study would be, well, why did it fail this time?
Right. Or why is it changing? Mm-hmm. So really the key thing for me, and this is just part of what I've done in my career, that the key uniting factor to what I study in science as a scientist links back to satellite data. So I work at a place, and some people who live in Sioux Falls know this, that we have a center outside of town called the Earth Resources Observation and Science Center. And it's where we collect and archive huge amounts of satellite data. And we use that satellite data to study the Earth. This is a facility that's part of the U.S. Geological Survey, and I do work for the USGS. And I just have to say, my caveat right now is I'm not speaking for that organization. Right. I'm just visiting with you like I'd visit with a friend, and I hope someday we can meet in real life instead of just on Twitter. But because I'm sure we'd have a lot of fun.
If we both know John Holt, John should host us.
Yeah, so John Holt worked at Eros for I can't tell you how long, multiple years, and he used to force me into podcasts, twist my arm.
Yeah.
And I'm not a comfortable person. I I'm a true introvert, but I've had to be an extrovert as part of my job. So yeah, John would be like, it'll be great. We'll do this, we'll cover this topic, but he always had to like talk me off the ledge. John is a great person and a wonderful communicator. He doesn't work for Eros anymore, and we sincerely miss him because he was so wonderful.
Well,
and we have other people working at Eros in our communications and outreach that are very good as well.
I know,
and if scientists don't communicate well, like we have a reputation for not being good communicators. We don't know how to speak to regular people. We use too many big words, and I can do that. So, hopefully I won't mess up. But and phonology is one of those words.
I used to tell John that once he went out to Eros, I would say, so I'm counting on you, sir, that when the aliens are coming for real, you guys are going to know, and we need a code word that is your status update where we're like, this is John letting it out. This is the real deal. Put on your tinfoil hat, get out your bikini. It's time. And then I think that the idea of me putting on a tinfoil hat and a bikini at his coded command was enough for him to be like, whatever, Jen.
Yeah. You do you, right?
So have you lived your whole life in South Dakota?
I have not.
Where did you start out?
I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else. So I moved to Sioux Falls at the end of my graduate career. So I've lived, I guess, in 4 states: Arizona, Colorado, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And I moved to South Dakota in my 30s, late 20s, early 30s. And I've lived here ever since. And I love Sioux Falls most of the time. I think it's been a great community to live in. It's been fun to watch it evolve over the past 30 years.
Yeah.
So I do consider Sioux Falls home. And I met my husband here. I have stepkids who live here. I have stepkids who live other places. This is home now. And really my work family, my science family, it is family, and they work at Eros, and they're part of my life. I am somebody who's worked at the same place for a long time. And, you develop these relationships with people, and scientists are particular kinds of people, can be very opinionated, obviously, about what we think we've seen in the data, or we get really into data.
Yeah.
We're geeky.
Well, you should be at SuperCon.
Yeah, so I don't even know about SuperCon. Tell me about SuperCon.
Oh, SuperCon is a geek and nerd convention in Sioux Falls next weekend. It is the convergence of all things nerdy, according to Shane Gerlach, the co-creator of the con. His words, not mine. But it's a Comic-Con and cosplay and science and everything. And I know there's Mythbusters, and there's a young girl here in Sioux Falls that she's from Sioux Falls and lives in Sioux Falls, but I think she's on Mythbusters, and she's going to be doing stuff, and she's a kid, and she's like building rockets or something. I got to look into everything she's about, and it's just crazy how many opportunities there are out there now for young people to have access to those things. And SuperCon is a place where they can come together and flourish. And like you said, find other people like them that are super particular and super into their thing.
Sounds very cool.
So, and then somehow I got roped into, I'm going to MC it. Like Shane needed a voice, and that's my thing, is just talking. So he said, yeah, come on down. And we need you to talk this year. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to learn stuff. The only thing, the big selling point for me is I'm a horror film fan, and Jason from Friday the 13th is going to be there. So that's why I was going to go as an attendee. And then Shane was like, well, here, quick, learn all the other stuff too.
All right.
That
sounds amazing. So that's Saturday and Sunday next weekend? It's
Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday next weekend. September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And it's out at the Denny. It's out at the Sanford. So it's pretty, I'm pretty jazzed.
I've never been to anything like that.
Oh yeah. And I've been to all the past years as an attendee, but when you go, you tend to focus on just one part, whatever you're into.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jazzed this year that I have to, by my requirements, get into everything. So yeah,
You've got
so
a
I'm excited.
sample.
Yeah. How did you come to not only a career in science, but a career in earth science like that? When did you decide I want to study why birds migrate?
Okay, so my pathway, it depends on how far we want to go back, but when I first went to college, I thought that I might I was trying different things out, and I thought that I might be interested in business. And I took like one economics course, and it was like, nope, that's not my thing. I certainly came from a family that not of scientists, but really a lot of interest in the world. And my mom and dad lived in multiple countries. My dad was a petroleum engineer, and I was actually not born in the U.S. because of him. And I think I just sort of absorbed, this interest in different cultures in different countries. My first degree is actually in anthropology, so it's not even really a STEM. That's not really STEM, but it's all about people, right? So
Right.
what do people do? Where do they live? What are their cultural practices?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I came to this through a long pathway, but after anthropology, I worked for the National Park Service for a couple of years, and I did mapping. I was making maps. So we were working in the desert Southwest, and I was actually freehanding maps of archaeological sites, which
So
took
do you have
me.
the official title then as a cartographer? Would you consider yourself?
So that was my next idea, right? So
Yeah.
I want to be a cartographer. I ended up going to college at University of Nebraska Lincoln. This archaeology job led me there, but I started taking classes in cartography. And at that point, so think about being in your mid 20s. I think I was maybe 26, 27. I was like, well, maybe I could get a job working for National Geographic and be a cartographer. That the odds of me doing that, I probably had better odds of getting struck by lightning than, I mean, that's a pretty prestigious job, honestly.
That's
So
where, I mean, everybody,
yeah, so I
still
was
have time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like right now, no, I don't think so. But I took so that the technology has really changed since I was in school. But I took a class while I was in grad school, the title of which is remote sensing. So again, we'll get into geeky topics, but remote sensing is sensing something from a distance, right? So you're not touching it. It's not like a thermometer taking your temperature. That's direct sensing. This is remote. So remote sensing is all about what we can do with imagery from either airplanes or actually now drones. I mean, I'm not a drone person, but that's been a whole expansion of remote sensing in the last like 10 years. Imagery from drones, imagery from aircraft, and imagery from space. And after I took that class, that teacher became my main professor for my degree, and he sent me up to Eros for a job interview. I came up to South Dakota. I drove up from Lincoln. I'm going to say 1989, and interviewed for a summer internship at Eros. And really the rest is sort of history. I mean, there are a lot of sort of job changes in there. We are a large facility, about 650 people, but we hire a lot of federal contractors, and I have worked for multiple contractors there over my years. And then I became a federal scientist about 10, 12 years ago, a little bit longer than that. But yeah, COVID, everything is time warp due to COVID, but
you'll
yeah,
know
so that's
probably
what got me here.
If you have a history with cartography, you know what the phrase "here be dragons" means, right?
I don't know. I don't get the reference.
On old maps that where like here be lions, here be dragons, here be monsters, and that's the end of what they know.
Yeah.
So
it's great, those maps where and actually some of them was just artwork, like where they showed the edge of the earth and the water just, falling
pouring
off.
off, or there's
Right.
mermen and stuff like that. I actually have
Yeah.
Here Be Dragons tattooed on me because I'm like,
That's
yeah,
cool. Okay,
I'm the edge of the known is what I like to say.
When we meet in real life, we'll have that conversation too then.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go off into that topic. Map making is still, it's become a lot more digital. It was very, it was a lot more manual when I was in school. Now, I mean, the technology that, in my 30 years of being in this field, I mean, 30 years ago, you almost didn't really see satellite imagery even on the evening news. Like now,
right.
It's like part of our lives. We see it every evening as the backdrop for the weather report, right?
Right.
There's some sort of satellite. And, along with radar data that shows the systems moving over the clouds, the rain.
It's funny. I did one of these sit downs with Phil and Tyler from Dakota News Now, the weathermen. And the difference between Phil saying, when I started, we had to like point at this and put the stickers on the map. And Tyler was like, so I go click, click, and here's the visuals. And
technology has changed. Really changed.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like it's leaving me behind. I just, I'm amazed at what people can do. And, at a certain point, you kind of get encouraged to become more of a manager of people than a technologist or whatever you want to call it. So my science, I have a lot of science knowledge, but I'm not as spiffy on the computer anymore.
Right.
I have to have people help me. It's like, okay, I used to know how to do this, but that was like 3 versions of ARC ago, and now I can't do this anymore. So
I totally understand why when I was a kid, or your parents would be like, I could look for the remote, or I could make you change the channel. Because now, like, I'll get a new app on my phone and I'll have to call my daughter and be like, I need help. I can't. I need you to come over here and tell me my passwords. So yeah.
I mean, science is this is a quote of mine or whatever. Science is a team sport, so you need strong teams to do science. Eros, I'll just say to anybody who doesn't know what it is, we have a website, check it out online. We are starting, I believe, to do tours again. During COVID, we had to shut that down.
Yeah, that had to change.
But there is some really interesting stuff. And if you are a geek at heart, it's a great place to go geek out. Lots of computers. We pull down and store gigabytes, terabytes of satellite data. We're considered sort of the Library of Congress for satellite data.
Well, and tell me the hashtag Landsat.
Okay, so Landsat is a series of satellites that USGS, so who I work for, we are responsible for managing those systems, their missions when they're up in space collecting data. The USGS is responsible for them. Landsat as a series, has been around since the 1970s, and actually the Landsat program is the reason why Eros is in South Dakota and is a facility. There's a long history to it. It's really, it's fascinating if you're into that sort of history, geek history, but Landsat itself is the longest in the world. It holds the record for the longest civilian satellite record. So this means it was collected by a government, not by a commercial entity. And the data have been collected continuously with very little exception since the 1970s. The early part of the record is not as good because of the engineering and the
because it was the beginning.
The design,
so
the design is improved.
It didn't have a bar to reach. It had to build the goalpost.
Right. So the imagery or the satellites and the sensors that were collecting the imagery in the 70s, I'd compare to like the Model T Ford to today's whatever, my car is sitting out in the garage. It's a very different technology, but yet we still have data from that era. And the thing with, to go back to phenology, to try and make sense out of these cycles and see whether they're changing, we need this long record. So we
Right.
cannot tell what's going on the Earth's surface with any kind of sense, make any kind of sort of quantitative, um, statistical decisions, based decisions about what's going on if we don't have a long record. So, another one of my kind of platforms to stand on, and soapboxes, whatever, is that we need to continue to measure. And to tie back to your talking to Phil Schreck or
Yep.
those guys, it's like they rely on these long historical records of temperature and precipitation. If we don't have that, we don't know what's going on. So
Right.
and that's a true sort of a cornerstone or foundation of science, is the long records.
What do you think is that maybe my cat stealing my bandana here? There's probably some biological thing that says if Jenny's recording, her cats love her the best during that moment because they always
You're
want to come and
attracting.
be. Yeah. What is something? Is there ever things that you guys record that are affecting or that are showing change or things like that that's affecting South Dakota, but only affecting like one region? Is there any? I mean, like I always think it's crazy when I hear like, so we had an earthquake or we had whatever. Are there changes? Because there's very different dynamics under the top few layers of the earth in South Dakota. Is there something that you think the general public doesn't realize is kind of
I don't think that anything that I know is top secret or not known. I mean, the things that we have looked at in South Dakota specifically, probably some of the fires, fire behavior, fire scars, things like that, out in the hills especially. Some of our data is used for that. While fires are happening, satellite data can be used to help sort of guide where to send people to, especially if it's really remote. It wouldn't be only the satellite data. They, fire commands, they use other data as well. But and then after the fire,
I feel like that's something that a layperson would understand as far as that. I mean, I can't have a forest fire in Sioux Falls because we don't have those kind of forests. So that being a regional thing, that
yeah,
makes sense to me totally, that you guys
yeah.
would have to focus on if you're trying to help that area prevent or predict things, that's why they would be different. I suppose over here for us, some of it is the flooding and the croplands and the river.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I was going to say, and actually sort of more long-term, looking with this longer record, we have seen, and there are sort of longer cycles, I think, of wet and dry that we find that we can observe in the prairie potholes, sort of northeast part of the state.
Did you say prairie potholes?
Prairie pothole region, yeah. The small lakes, that's sort of what that general area is referred to as, the prairie potholes. It goes up into North Dakota as well, sort of eastern North Dakota.
So what would be like a part of, like, what would be the name of a town or a county in South Dakota that I would recognize as being in the prairie pothole zone?
Oh, like Aberdeen.
Oh,
Yeah. If you drive up there or even look at imagery of those places, you will see lots and lots of lakes. And as you go further north, there's just even more. Some of them are deeper lakes. Some of them are wetlands that actually have, sort of cycles of drying out and getting wet. There's vegetation on some of them. Actually, one of my colleagues, Jen Rover, studies the cycles of wet and dry in the prairie puddles, and there have been, in general, that part of the world is, in the last 30 years, is getting a bit wetter, not drier. And you see a response from the the vegetation and in the water, from the lakes getting bigger or, deeper. Yeah, so that's a South Dakota thing that's happening, that we have studied.
And it's kind of unique to, I mean, you
Yeah,
can't have a
fairly
prairie
unique.
pothole in Miami.
No, you're not. And actually people don't, if you're not from here, and actually if you don't even get out in the country, you're like you say, what is that?
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
these potholes? I think another term for it is the prairie coteau, right? So there's that structure that of uh, I'm stumbling now, but the glaciers came down from the north,
Right.
and they carved sort of large, wide valleys in this part of the country.
Right.
And there's
And
a high
that
area
is
that looks kind
more
of like a knife, right? Yeah,
right.
pointing up towards Fargo.
Right. And that's an eastern side of the state.
Yes.
It's much more obvious phenomenon over here, the
Yes.
glacier activity, which I've always thought is amazing. I've lived my whole life in Sioux Falls. I've always said that if I want to get right, I've got to stand barefoot on granite. But I also love the Badlands for the same reason. If I want to touch the past, the Badlands is where I want to go. And I love that there are different places in South Dakota where the average person can go and see different kinds of like history all the way back, that, and you can see the story of the planet. You might not be able to read the story, but you can see it. Yeah. And I think that that's something unique to South Dakota that we're very, very lucky to have.
Very much. Yeah, the Badlands are so unique.
Yeah.
And they're also interesting to look at from space. They're very bright, not much grows on them, and they're very bright. So it's quite if you're looking at satellite imagery of South Dakota, it's quite a they definitely stand out.
Does it appear more colorful than it does in person? I mean, a lot of times there's some drab parts.
It's just really different than the surrounding vegetation because there's grasslands around there,
right.
And where the Badlands just stand out. So it's more the contrast. And in our imagery, we can manipulate more than just the visible. So we collect imagery across the optical bands and actually into the thermal. So we can this takes a little bit more explaining, but we can
different spectrums.
We can image vegetation in the near IR where vegetation is highly reflective, and the shortwave infrared. And so the Badlands are going to stand out differently depending on what parts of the spectrum that you're using to image them.
That's awesome. Is there, I don't know, in my mind, a satellite is always moving and not staying in one place very long. Is there any part, and I don't know anything about space. I mean, that I've never even been in an airplane. So the highest I've ever been is like, I was on the top floor of that condo that's on Kiwanis one time. Like, so are there any satellites that are sitting still and like looking at South Dakota 24/7?
There are so many different kinds of satellites up there. It's actually a whole topic of, both concern and study, and a lot of that's sort of not my thing, but I'm aware of it. So there are things called geostationary satellites that are really part of our communication system. And they when you say sit in one place, they're just, the Earth is turning, but they're staying, the Earth is turning,
they follow
they follow that, right? So they are stationary above a certain point in the Earth.
So like a balloon on a string. If the string was on your car, the balloon is going to go with it.
Very good analogy. The other kind of satellite are called polar orbiters, and Landsat that we talked about earlier is a polar orbiting satellite. So the Earth is turning sort of like if this is the North Pole, the Earth is turning, doing its orbiting every day, and the satellite is circling. There are actually some pretty cool videos of that on our website. So the satellite goes from the North Pole to the South Pole during the daylight hours, and then it comes back around on the other side of the Earth in the dark. So that's usually one orbit, one daylight swath, if you will, and one nighttime swath. And so for Landsat and for other Earth observing satellites, that's one of the phrases we use. These are Earth observing satellites. They take imagery day and night, but actually for what I do, the daytime imagery is a lot more useful. We're interested in studying light that is reflected off the surface. And everything that I've done for 30 years is really about light or energy that's reflected off the Earth's surface. And there are some people who work with the thermal bands, and thermal data is a little different than that. It's more related to thermal emissivity, and I can't even speak to that very intelligently because I haven't worked with it very much. Oh, my nose is itching. Excuse me.
That's okay. It's probably my cats sending you dander through the interwebs. If maybe not at Eros, but maybe somewhere in the same like realm of professional stuff that people in your field look at, is there anybody studying light pollution? Do you guys study like how annoying it is that we never really truly get dark anymore?
So I can think of one study, and there's probably many others, but there's NASA has a group that they call it the black marble. So it's Earth at night versus the blue marble. Some reference the Earth as the big blue marble, right? So the black marble, maybe it kind of gets to what you're asking. They look at nighttime lights, and over time, again, if you have this long record of how
the spread of urban centers.
Right. And I mean, for example, if you're following geeky things on Twitter, which I do, like NASA feeds or something, there will be some imagery. I just saw a graphic last week that was showing the Ukraine. And since the war, a lot of Ukraine is dark, where there used to be light there. So yeah, it's just another facet of what can be studied with satellite data. In terms of light pollution, yeah, I think you could study that. I'm just not aware of something specifically doing that right now. So how and you'd really need some very precise measurements, because
right,
no sort of giant pixels. You need some real detail to look at that. But that's a thing, to
I
try
wish
and reduce.
I wish there was a way to encourage embracing the darkness a little more, even as a cultural thing or community thing. I would love it if an urban center, say the size of Sioux Falls, if it was like, we're going to just, because everything now, we're surrounded by light and tiny LEDs, and you're never ever always in the dark, and like just if we could just all go dark for an hour and let everything rest, for real, let everything rest once a day, and agree that, here we go from 11 to midnight for sure, 100% darkness, and just stop the hum. I think we would all be like,
that'd be so
that's
healthy.
kind of cool. Let's do it more.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting idea.
Yeah. I see, because I think about that too when you look at satellite photos of change of when you see nighttime shots, and it's like, here's everything. And like you said, then it's so striking that if you see a place that a year ago was light and now it's dark, something catastrophic caused it, and how the emotional impact of that from so far away.
The impact of satellite imagery is often, it has the feature of space, right? So it's a continuous image of the Earth's surface. It's not just, it gives you that larger view, but at the same time, it's even more powerful when you look through time. So,
right.
It's a space-time, it's the ability to study space through time. And it's very
cool. You guys are wizards.
There's a lot of fun things that go on. It's highly technical.
But you're real time travelers, for real.
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that the capability is really, the superpower of these things is time travel, for sure. Landsat's superpower is time travel. And, you know, going back to, I mean, some of the examples that kind of postcards of change, for example, Las Vegas, growth in Las Vegas. So they'll show we will show images of Las Vegas in the 70s and then how giant it is now. And then, just down the road, we have, just down the road from Las Vegas, we have the Glen Canyon Dam and Lake Powell. And then, associated with the growth of the city, you see the change in the water. And of course, it's more complicated than that. That's too simplistic. But there are issues with us supplying water.
What you guys are doing is a way to follow it and see that change from enough of a distance that the people on the ground, I mean, I see these four walls around me. I could dispute with you right now whether or not it's day or night on the other side of this wall. And you could show me, hey, I'm outside of your four walls. And here's what you can't dispute. Yeah. Here's everything that you can see.
Yeah, I find that really compelling when people argue about that change isn't happening. There is a lot of evidence that change is happening. But some of it might be expected. It's all like, is this normal or is this not normal? And again, I'd argue that we need to keep collecting the data and doing the long record, and more will be learned. Right? We never know everything. We're always going to study.
Assume that we're doing the worst and attempt to be our best is kind of what we should be doing when it comes to a lot of things with climate and land stewardship.
Well, what I think is interesting is that we see the effects. So it's more about, as we monitor and maybe sort of look at policies or even just habitual whatever behaviors, we see the world changing. So it's causes and consequences, and sometimes things are just happening at the same time. So you can't say, well, we did A, so therefore B happened. But satellite data can help draw the inferences, and if your effects are sort of strong enough, you can start to make a cause and effect relationship. But it's tricky. Yeah, so I mean, one of the projects that I was involved in was looking at change in irrigation across the country, irrigated agriculture, and that actually does change over time. There are parts of the West that you can't grow anything without extra water. In the East, that's not the case. Most crops can be grown sort of east of us. Iowa and Illinois and Ohio, they haven't needed supplemental water, but irrigation in this country is being needed more and more to grow crops. And then you have places like locations in Texas where the groundwater has gone down so much that people aren't getting access to it, and then they have to change what they're growing. And that's a really interesting thing to follow too.
Do you guys ever either intentionally or accidentally follow like I keep thinking of animal migration? Have you ever in your experience been looking for something and then accidentally saw some really cool animal behavior, like a Sasquatch, for example?
Okay, so no
twice
Sasquatch
if you can't answer this question on camera.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, the data that we work with is not detailed enough to see a Sasquatch. So we'd need drones for that. These satellites are orbiting something like 700 or 800 kilometers up, and they're just too far away to see that. Now, I understand the military might have better technology, but I don't work with that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Eros is more designed to just, what can we do with the data? Make it free and open. Anybody can get it. We don't have any secrets. But I will say an interesting story from the early days. in the 70s, and or maybe the 80s, but I'm gonna forget the exact date of Chernobyl, right? The
Oh, yeah.
Chernobyl nuclear disaster happened, and our
Mhm.
center had imagery and processed imagery and was right there on the scene, helping get information out about that kind of disaster. So it's the bigger things. So I'm going to say we're not, if we were going to look for animals, we couldn't do that with Landsat.
With
They
what
would have
you're doing.
every sort of pixel, which is a picture element, is about the size of a baseball field. So it would have to be a really big Sasquatch for us to
Yeah,
see it.
please tell us if you discover that. The day you come in and you're like, okay, you guys.
That would be
I
really
love
big.
like when Outdoor Campus, when they post their trail cam videos, I'm just waiting for one,
Yeah.
you know, because they hide them pretty good so that the general public can't mess with them, but they catch some funny things on there. And I'm just like, there's going to be a Bigfoot.
Yeah, I love that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. Trail
that
cams are
stuff.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think if somebody was, if you were a young person in South Dakota and what do you think an interest that a kid has right at a young age that they don't realize, you know what, if you're interested in that, this might be a career field for you. Like you started out being interested in map drawing or interested in anthropology, and it led to this
Yeah.
whole
Well,
different path.
so those two things come from me. So a while ago, and I think it's still going on, people were doing geocaching,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you
I've done
know,
that.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, like going out and looking for these geocache locations, you know, that's all about geography.
right,
And kind of like searching for something and then finding it and then putting it back. But, you know, like, how did you find it? You know,
right,
like what were the clues? Was it just a location on your phone, or are you really paying attention to, you know, your surroundings and,
right.
you know, what are the directions? What hill did you have to walk up? You know, like, where is it
When
hidden?
you got there in the
Yeah,
area of it, what drew your eye to the exact right spot? Because you can have
yeah,
the GPS, but to find the cache, what
yeah,
drew you to it? What secret
yep.
thing, or what made you want to put it there if you're the one that installed it?
Yeah, so that's kind of like treasure hunting and geography together, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think if you're interested in that, I don't know, you know, I would have to think about all the people that I've worked with over the years and what got them into this. And people come from a lot of different directions. Some people get interested in this because they're interested in, you know, again, back to biology, they're interested in maybe agriculture and how crops are grown. And then they decide they want to look at that at a very large scale versus just a single farm or something.
yeah. I can
Um,
see if you grew
yeah,
up in a farm family, but
yeah,
you're the geeky science kid in the farm family, and
yep.
you're like, I don't want to feed the chickens, but I want to figure out what we need to do to keep the chickens thriving.
Yeah, or here's the thing, like, you know, soil moisture across your whole farm, you know, like, where's the soil moisture doing well, and where is it really dry and I need to add moisture? I mean, that's sort of going back to irrigated ag, but
Right.
that's so there's an area of science called precision agriculture, which incorporates you know, scientific measurements like precipitation and temperature, and then combines that with a soil map, back to maps, you know, soil map, and then maybe some knowledge about how the crop that you planted grows. So there can be modeling behind that. And it's done at a pretty high level of precision. And what I would mean by that would be, you know, the detail is fine enough to have a lot of um, variability shown over one crop field. With Landsat, it depends on the size of the field, but we're probably looking at, you know, maybe 30 or 40 pixels over a field or something. We're not looking at hundreds and hundreds of locations, which you would need if you're really going to see how your crops are doing
Right.
in a very detailed way. So precision ag is something I think you can go to SDSU and study that. There is a GIS and remote sensing department up there, and geography folks. You know, you can get people can go to school and study and get like a 2-year, what they call a GIS certificate. And GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. And when you talk about just the geography part of this, that branches into looking at transportation networks, or like our city has a GIS department.
Like for urban development.
Exactly, exactly. So our city's GIS department knows where all the development's going on, all of the road construction, all of the permits, who owns. I mean, that's very detailed mapping. That's not necessarily the remote sensing side of it, but I think they probably have taken imagery of the city, like elevational data,
Right.
that sort of thing. Yeah, so geography so my second degree is in geography, and that's when I was going to be work for National Geographic. And I just think, geography is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. That's a good pun. I like that. What is is there anything that in your work here has made you go visit a part of South Dakota that you wouldn't have if you hadn't seen something in the satellite, and then you're like, I want to go, that's cool? Or even in a different, more specific way, has there ever been like, yeah, I've been to the Badlands, but then I saw that this is what the Badlands looks like on September 23rd every year. I want to go see it on that day. Have you, like, I'm really interested in like Stonehenge and Newgrange and all that, the places where we just had solstice, and the places where the sun, sometime back in the day, some ladies of Landsat, before it existed, they knew where to put the rocks, and so that they made this cool thing. Has there been anything that you've learned about South Dakota that then in your personal life, you're like, I'm going to see that, I'm going to touch that with my hands?
I guess I'm thinking of a couple of summers ago, and maybe this was longer ago than that. I was collaborating with a woman, a postdoc at Eros. She still works there, and she was studying how, sort of more generally, how climate affects landscape change, land cover change, and how climate's interacting. And she centered her study in western South Dakota, and we took a field trip, and we went out, and we had plotted our journey where we wanted to go to, and we were above, and it's some sort of shale. I can't remember I'm not a geologist, but it was some sort of shale out kind of north of the Badlands. And we were checking out, how the water was, how wet it was, and how, how the landscape was responding to water. And I think that particular summer it had been wetter than normal versus drier. And yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, I probably, because I didn't grow up in South Dakota, I've basically been more on the interstates than other places. I mean, I have gotten off the beaten path a little bit, but, in terms of like the north central and northwest part of the states, I haven't seen much of it,
Me neither. And I've lived in South Dakota my whole life, and I still follow that slide rule of I-29 or I-90. And now I'm realizing
there's a lot.
You got to get off the interstate. And if I can't get there, I want to talk to somebody from there and have them tell me what's it like, and that's very interesting that's kind of how this project got started, with this goal of wanting to talk to people. Because sometimes I feel like a tourist in my own state.
Yeah. And I mean, another part of the state that back to those prairie potholes, I think that area is fascinating too. And you said you want to touch granite. I mean, that's what's so cool about that region. They haven't, agriculture hasn't really taken it over. It's still quite natural because there's all this granite that was moved around during the glacial period.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, people have to really get out there and clear rocks if they're going to plow.
Yeah, you got to really want to farm.
Yeah. And, hopefully they don't plow it all up, because it's beautiful. It's really beautiful land.
Right.
Yeah, the photo behind me is actually of Big Stone Lake, which is up in that corner of the state. Yeah.
What as we're getting close to wrapping up our hour here, what is something that you think every South Dakotan should learn more about because what they think they know this about our state because they're a South Dakotan. So we all have these things that we're like, well, I 100% know this about South Dakota, and we're all getting it wrong.
Oh my God, you were challenging me
What is
so much
something that
with
you
that
think
one.
we should Google and learn the right way to tell it?
Oh my God, I'm trying to think.
We for real have the hottest summers and the worst winters, right? That's true.
Actually, I don't think that's true.
Oh gosh, darn it. Okay, fine,
Yeah,
I'll research that.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's always North Dakota for worse winters, right?
Well,
Um,
we only have rumors of that because there's no actual people in North Dakota. Those,
yeah,
I mean,
North Dakotans would argue with you on that.
they leave. They don't tell us. They leave North Dakota in the winter. They go
Yeah.
somewhere else. It's all rumors. I don't know if there's even people up in North Dakota.
So I feel like so I'm flipping around what you're saying because my family doesn't live here. So I talk to a lot of people who don't live in South Dakota and really don't. They have ideas about what it's like here, and they're dead wrong.
Well,
You
what's an
know,
example of something that they're dead wrong about?
they think it's winter for 6 months, and they don't realize how
It's really winter
gorgeous
for 9.5 months.
they don't realize how gorgeous our springs and falls actually are.
Yes.
Um, they think that it's flat as a pancake in South Dakota, and it's not. It is so
There's
not.
definitely parts that are, and those parts are beautiful for their own.
True.
I love living where the sky touches the ground. I love it.
And I was just going to add that our skies are beautiful.
Mhm.
The real pleasure and beauty of living in a plain state like South Dakota is to see the clouds come in and roll by. They're just gorgeous. And yeah, I mean, it's for folks that anyway, for folks that want you know a great difference in like mountainous landscape or lots of water, coastline, that kind of thing. Yeah, the middle of the country it definitely doesn't have that, but we have things that they would be surprised at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sort of feel like I speak more about, I like to tell people about South Dakota that don't know it, because they do have assumptions that they make. I don't know. I'm still trying to think how to answer your question. I would say even if you're from South Dakota, get out there and look at our state park system. I mean, we have some wonderful state parks to go to, and they're all over the place.
Right. What's your
Beautiful.
favorite season?
Um, I think fall is my favorite season. Yeah, so right now, and it's a good phonology topic. So, um, I enjoy summer too, but yeah, fall is, I don't know, there's something really sweet about fall, maybe because, summer's going away and we're like, no.
Yeah. I used to be very much a late spring and a summer kid. And now as I've gotten older, I have a greater appreciation for the fall and into winter because I think I personally am seeking rest. I like to compare it to the maiden mother crone. I'm in my crone phase and I just need it to be dark and quiet. Leave me alone. You know?
It kind of goes back to your, why don't we have an hour of quiet every day? Like,
Exactly. I just
so
need some dark.
winter time is our quiet time.
Yeah, it's our rest.
It
So,
is. It very much
yes.
is.
Oh, well, I have so many things to Google now and so many like hashtags to click on and
Yeah, I
okay,
would
Kat,
say to
you'll
people
be on the
out there,
camera.
if you want to find out about what's going on with satellite imagery in the world, you can Google NASA and you can get a lot of stuff, but you can Google USGS Eros and follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. There's lots of news and you will see really cool imagery. I'll just say, just the other day, NASA posted something and they discovered a new island that was coming up in the middle of the Pacific with the Landsat 9, which is the new Landsat that was just launched last September.
Like a new
So
island being born right now?
An island being born in September of 2022.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
If you go to my Twitter feed and look at my likes, you'll find it.
Do you
I'll
know
like it.
of anything like historically a natural land feature in South Dakota that's been born in the last 30 or 40 years?
I can't think of an example. We're very stable here in
Yeah.
terms of land
I
cover.
can't imagine.
I suppose, the examples would be like after something abrupt happened, like
Well, I imagine new
like a
growth. Like when
fire.
we have big fires, then we get new
Yeah,
trees, but
or a big
a land
landslide.
mass, a
Yeah.
land change. Have we had anything major disappear? I mean, you hear of like Lake Mead is disappearing. But how about in South Dakota? Is there anything major that's complete, that's a natural land feature that's completely gone?
I mean, this isn't exactly what you're saying, but we had those massive floods a couple of years ago. We have those kind of changes we do see, but again, they kind of, a flood happens, but it doesn't stay flooded,
Right.
so it kind of cycles through. I can't think of something that's like that big a change that hasn't gone back to the way it was. I suppose over the last, however many years it is, Mount Rushmore is a change.
Right.
It's not immediate. It's not immediate,
But there are changes that have been forced by man, not
right.
by nature.
You're
And
talking
that's
natural.
just crazy that an island is being born.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming up, lava is coming up and they caught an image of it. So
it's not even just like a change of the topography of the sand underneath or the water. This is the earth bursting something forth.
Yeah, it's plate tectonics. It's where some Pacific, I don't know the names of the plates,
Right.
but where these different plates are touching each other, and it's an area of immense volcanic activity. So this is a volcano.
Wow.
Yeah. I know, fascinating, isn't it?
I know, because you feel like we got to be done by now, right? Like what else could you just, but yeah. There's change all the time. That's awesome.
What is the saying? The only thing you can count on is change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for sitting and chatting with me and putting new ideas in my head. I'm going to definitely be looking a lot of stuff up. I'm going to be Googling some things.
Thank you so much for asking me. I really, really enjoyed it, Jenny. And I would love to meet you in person, and maybe I'll see you at
SuperCon. Yeah, because you need to come out and find all these kids and be like, you guys, there's an island. Get the Jeep. We got to go. I assume that anytime you're outside of your house, you're wearing your pith hat. You have probably some kind of binoculars. I mean, I'm assuming that you'd be the type of person where you'd be like, I've got my pens, my paper, my pickaxe. I'm ready.
Binoculars.
Yes, everything. Yeah. I think that would be, and I think more kids need to live their life ready like that. Like,
I think that's a great suggestion.
There's
a lot to learn.
We have all these kids doing drills for things at school. I think we need to start having an island is being born drills. More kids should know what to do if an island is being born.
Yeah, so cool. So cool. So yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, then go for a science degree. I mean, science is amazing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna let Jesslyn take a breath here. An island is being born. I love the King Kong movies and like where they have their little under the inner earth thing. And so I'm gonna definitely check out and see if maybe that's what Eros will catch on their next Passover. Is this like Gorilla Island coming up? Because that would be fantastic. But that's also why I am a layperson and not a real scientist, because there's no such things as Yetis that they'll say publicly. Everybody have a great night. I am still looking for people from all over South Dakota, because now I want to ask about the phrenology of their county. So if you know anybody across South Dakota that wants to just sit and talk with me about what it's like where they live, they should go to 605speaks.com and click on my calendar and pick a date and time, and we'll talk about it. I feel like there should be a study of where the next Walmarts are and why some places thrive without them. I want to talk about whether or not there's Walmarts in your town. I have now checked off my bucket list: a librarian, my friend Shane the nerd, a weatherman, now a lady of STEM. And what's next? I need a mechanic. I still want to talk to a mechanic. I got questions about diesel. So 605speaks.com. See you tomorrow night at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. See you next weekend at SuperCon. Do your best for our planet. Where there's only one South Dakota and we need to keep it around. Bye.